Some of you may note that I missed the last posting yesterday of Q. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I did put it in the cover, the thumbnail. And there is a New York Times article referenced by Q, apparently. Once Q got to quote the end, sometime after that, came across this March 4th article in the New York Times, which basically says that artificial intelligence videos are easy to put together. Some of you may have seen that one person can be talking and moving ahead, tipping back and forth, and at the same time the computer says, this is George Bush over here. We use his voice to modulate. This person, what this person says comes out of George Bush's mouth, and as this person tilts back and forth, the modulated video of George Bush comes across on the other one. And so what it does is it allows people to make up things that somebody else might have said and make it look fairly realistic. There's some question about whether or not you can figure out whether it's real or not, but obviously, as many of you know, that's going to become less and less possible. So anyway, the final posting was, try as they might, fail, comma, they will, no free passes, MSM, signed Q. And so the implication of it is they're not going to get away with hiding stuff or using fake videos, and that there is no place for them to hide. So again, if you have some question to look at Q, it's https://QAnonPosts.com/ and you can take a look at it directly there. There's no magic or secret to it. I'm not a magician, nor am I hiding behind the curtain, as a couple have suggested. So, and incidentally, I've had a lot of fun with all of the comments about what kind of group this ought to be. Again, it's not of consequence. It's just fun, right? It's just fun. So one of the people suggested, out from all the lists, is that we call the group a leap of frogs, which I think is really good. There are a few of you detractors who have made note of the fact that I was once a lawyer, and of course that's part of the evil, right? And one of my favorite comments about lawyers is, you know, there's a gaggle of geese, a flock of chickens, etc., all the things we went through. Well, a group of lawyers is called a greed. So there's a greed of lawyers. And while a lot of lawyers don't like lawyer jokes, I always thought they were very funny. So there is an Anon DQ or DK video posting that was sent to me twice by two different people in a matter of a half hour, and I thought there was some serendipity to it, so I looked. It is pretty dark. I'm going to post it. For those of you who are simply watching Q, I don't have any more about Q, but I do have a challenge for the folks that might be curious or inquiring about what we're doing, and perhaps what we're doing beyond just what is given to us by Q, which is something that has haunted me, if haunted is the right word, to say what more can we do. Obviously we're getting a lot of stuff for Q, and people are doing all kinds of scrambling around, but it doesn't tell us much about a lot of things. And many of you have sent me videos and or books and or things that I should look at, which open up other aspects of our world. Frankly, it is just plain overwhelming. And while I can do a couple of those a day, I can't do them all, and I know most of you feel the same way. But anyway, I looked at this video, and as I say, it's dark. It's pretty critical of the entire situation, perhaps even more critical than Q is in many ways, and certainly in some ways less playful. But I thought that perhaps for those of you who, and many of you have said, hey, look, I can do research, I can do background, I know about these things. So let me give you a challenge, okay? I'm going to post that video, the link to that video in my context, in my explanation. And then I'm going to give you some points in here. And if anybody wants to research these and send me the research or send me the links or tell me what books you've researched and found these individual information pieces, I will look at focusing on those and reporting back. Now, obviously, if you want to tell me the Earth's flat, and I know a few people that have posted on here, I'm just simply not going to do it. I am fairly convinced, both as a matter of 3D geometry and from all the views I've had of the world, that the Earth is actually in some fashion round. So, but as to other things, as you will see, I may be far more open about looking at different things that could be of worth. So this, I'm just going to point out to you the topic and where this stuff might be found on this Anon DK. I'm not going to tell you I give great credence to what is posted by this Anon DK. That is, I'm not telling you it's true or not true, because I honestly don't know. Some of the things I've done some research on, and I have my high anticipation that one or the other, either the truth of it or the non-truth of it, is most likely. So let's go through it. Recently there have been some references to the fact that the Titanic did not, it was not just an accidental sinking, that the Titanic sank for a reason, and even though there were hundreds and hundreds of people that drowned, they were really after 3 or 4 people that were on there who had been invited, the elites, and that this was at the time they were attempting to set up the Federal Reserve. So this falls into the Jekyll Island, the creature of Jekyll Island, and people who, including an Astor, who may have been opposed to the Federal Reserve being formed and knew exactly why the Federal Reserve ought not be established, and therefore was taken away. So the question then, I guess, is there a variety of them? Did they intentionally ram or run into an iceberg? Was it just a fake iceberg? That is, was there not an iceberg there at all? It might have been some kind of a series of explosions. Obviously, the explosions, even as the movie indicates, took too many panels, too many channels, sections of the ship for it to survive. So I'm putting a challenge out. This is on minutes 3 and 4, which is only lightly covered. Who was on there? Why did they want to get rid of them? What's the likelihood that it was sabotage? Number 2, there's a whole bunch of stuff about Obama, and I know there are including Dr. Corsi, who have pointed out problems with Obama. There's a comment here that every picture of him younger is photoshopped. Find one. The challenge is to find one. My issue is not so much where he was born or what his real name is, but there is some question I have about the birth of his kids. Were they really their kids? Are there any indications that Michelle was ever pregnant? Are there any indications or records of either of those kids' birth as the children of the Obamas? I have my suspicions that there may be a lot more about that is problematic. So will the real Obama please step forward? And I know some of you have some real ideas about it, but let's take a look. So let me go a little more quickly through these. There is question number 3 has to do with the opium trade, and the whole link in this video did not make use of all of it, but the Bush, the CIA, perhaps Obama, others, the movie America made, and the Barry Seal story, as some of you may know, lends some validity to all of that. Number 4 is the whole Pope Francis thing and the Jesuits Men in Black, and it goes from 9 to 11.5 minutes. There is some claim, and I've heard this many places, but I always get different names and different follow through and how they're linked, and that is the so-called 13 families. That's at 11:30 of this video, and the claim in there is that it is slaves to the Vatican. You know, which is it? Are some of these families, as I suspect, fully independent and full players, or are they all puppets? Is the Vatican one of the players, along with, as Q suggests, Saudi Arabia and the Rothschilds and Soros, or is it the other way around? The Vatican's actually running all of this, and these families, as there is another comment at minutes 25 to 29, that these banking families are all just puppets. So the number 6 one is from minute 13 to 16 is the Jesuit command, that is for an inductee for a special oath. Number 7 is the Knights Templar. You know, I've seen a whole bunch of stuff about this, but I've never seen anything definitive. Why are they still linked? Why are they still referenced? Who are they linked to? To whom are they linked, to use proper English? And what part do they play now with Jesuits and the Vatican and the Illuminati and all the rest of this stuff? Number 8 is there is some comment about Ignatius and the Jesuit order. That runs from minute 16 to 23. There is this other part which goes back to the earlier one, number 9 on my list, which is the Vatican's oversee and manage the Rothschilds, the banks, the funds of the 13 families, corporations, Gulf, Shell, etc., etc. And that's from minute 25 to 29. Again, who's on top of this thing, and how does this linkage work, and how does that reference to some of the stuff Q talked about? Are we going to Europe last because that's where all of this is, and is it the bankers or the Vatican or both that are at the bottom of this? Number 10 is the old Francis, which I think was 11 AD, and the new Francis, and all of the stuff relating to Francis. There's some very dark stuff about Francis, including political overthrows, missing children, families gone, torture, and the whole rest of this stuff in South America. The fact that he's part of the Jesuit order. Is he really just a lovely soul, or is he a very nasty one? There are even comments that he's the last of the popes. You know, I don't want to necessarily get into the religious concern about it, but that's a possibility. Number 11 is a totally different issue. It has to do with Warren Buffett and federal statutes playing with the responsibility of oil being transported and how Buffett got himself out of any liability for it. I'm not sure now what holdings Buffett has or how extensive they are in the railroad, and what the statute was that transferred it. But you know, the banks were released in 2008 from liability for loss in a lot of those mortgages, and we, the people, and the bankers and the federal government actually reimbursed the bankers for a shortfall on a bunch of those underwater mortgages, and then allowed them to short sell, to buy on a short sale, and then to have the buyer, the owner of the house, actually pay an unsecured note that doubled their return on investment. So that stuff is pretty nasty, and I know the trains are not the only issue, but it is an issue, and that is from 33.5 to 35 minutes. There's all kinds of stuff online about blockchains and digital currency, and whether it's digital or blockchain or cryptocurrencies. Under the smart grid, and places like Japan and Russia are already supposedly doing this. You know, I have a real problem with these cryptocurrencies, and maybe the blockchain protects. Certainly we've looked at doing that for videos as well. But you got to have an internet in order to have any money that way. And who controls the internet controls your money. We have complained about the Babylonian currency and about fiat currency and about how these things are all unfunded and unbacked and there's no gold or any other solid assets. But through this entire process, if these are simply fiat currencies, another form of fiat currency, and it in fact globalizes our money, it also can potentially globalize or digitize everything we have. So anything that you buy would have a digital number, anything that you own would have a digital number, your real estate would be all digitally applied, and you know what could happen then is that the digital links to you could simply be turned off and you end up homeless and penniless, and as they did in the Soviet Union, they could say anybody that messes with a dispossessed person, anybody who messes with them gets dispossessed. And if that happens, where are we? We are in the gulags, only we are digitally lost, and we are far worse off than that. So the next one is number 13, and that runs from 37 to 38 minutes. There's a bunch of stuff in here, and I know most of the Q folks are championing Trump. I keep seeing the dark side of this Trump stuff edging up, and it makes me anxious. John F. Kennedy was the son of a mobster, a guy who made money from importing oil and gas, or alcohol at the end of Prohibition. He was in with the mobsters even through the election of Kennedy, and that may have cost Kennedy some problems even up to his assassination. But the question then is, was he a good guy? I mean, even in spite of all the bad stuff, was he a good guy? And I think he was. So even if Trump's background is bad, is he a good guy? And I think that's distinctly possible. This video does not say that. So it goes through Frederick Drumpf, who was in Germany. It goes through Fred, his father, who was supposedly KKK. There's a claim that it's the Druid bloodline, that there is satanic stuff in it, that he speaks Gaelic because the Satanists, and some of them speak Gaelic, or at least that's how he uses it. There are links to others in this video, including Clinton and Merkel and a whole bunch of others, Hitler and the whole, so the question then is, if you take this up, number 13 is, what's true? I don't know. Number 14 has to do with Resort International. That's on minutes 38 and 39. It's a smaller point, but it could be really interesting. Number 15 runs from around minute 39, and it has to do with a Russian mob boss that supposedly was hanging out at one of the Trump properties, and that was facilitated by Trump. Number 16 runs from minute 39 to 40. It has to do with the Panama Papers that were released, and there is a claim, and I have not checked it, I've not looked, that there are 3,000 references, I'm just rounding off, of Trump in the Panama Papers. In other words, these Panama Papers were exposed, people using offshore accounts through a variety of different banks, and Panama was one of the hiding places for thousands of people to hide money that was untaxed, and that Trump supposedly has links to 32 companies. So the question is that true? What does the Panama Papers say? How does it link? Number 17, is on minute 40 to 41 and has to do with this whole Jeffrey Epstein stuff, his Lolita Express, the island, and the claims that Trump was there many times. Apparently, there is a showing on there that he is on the list as having ridden on the Express. The question then is, how many times is he linked to Epstein? We know Bill Clinton is, probably Hillary Clinton is. We know that, what's his name, the lawyer is. And some of the British royalty. How are these folks all linked? And there's also some very dark stuff about Trump, that he supposedly repeatedly raped his daughter, and that he is a homosexual, I'd like to know. I don't want to know, but if that's in fact true, then we need to know. Number 18 is somewhere around between minute 40 or 41, and it has to do with Michael Cohen. Some of you noted it, and it has been noted elsewhere. Supposedly an Illuminati handler who also supported Obama. His name is C-O-H-N, I think, Michael Cohen. Number 19 is on minute 41 and a half, is an Ely Hennessy, who was supposedly going to expose tax evasion and fraud, and she mysteriously died at a Trump-owned facility. Is that true? I don't know. Number 20, which is on minute 42, which has to do with the repeal of the Johnson Amendment, which keeps separation of church and state and keeps the 501c3 corporations clear of politics, unable to donate politically or to lose their status. Apparently that was repealed, and that allows the political organizations to wade in on, or the religious organizations to wade in on political matters. I'm not sure that's evil, but the linkage there is that it's a New World Order thing, making everything all one. I'm not sure it's true. It has to do also with Trump being a puppet of the Vatican, naming Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. So there's that. Number 21 has to do with biometrics for banking, and that's at minute 43. A one world currency and a baseless fiat currency, and I've talked about it in 2 or 3 other places. Number 22, which links back again, it has to do with the banking families and how insignificant they are, that the Vatican's actually controlling them and they only get what they're given. If they're multi-trillionaires, they're doing pretty well getting what they were given. Number 23, fires set by lasers, that's at minute 47. There's just a flash on it, and how that links us back to Agenda 21. Number 24 is at minute 49, which has to do with a God helmet that supposedly takes us over. Frankly, I don't think anybody's going to have to wear a God helmet. The AI stuff, the implantable biological AI stuff, will do that without having outward encumbrances like a helmet. But, is it there? Is it true? What does it do? Number 25, I've got a bunch of Canadian followers. I've been delighted. There are people all over the world that call themselves subscribers here. New Zealand, South Africa, Asia, Canada, Scandinavia, Germany, Central Europe, Ireland, and England. It's just, Australia is just astounding. So, but there's a comment at 49 or 50, about Canadians removing children over gender issues related to families. And finally, there are a couple, 3 or 4, that have to do at minute 52 about Albert Pike. I've always been curious about him. And there's the quote that supposedly there's a third world war that's going to go between Israel and Muslim, or Zionists and Islam, that was supposedly quoted in August of 1871. I don't know how he could be quoting a third world war if he didn't know about the previous 2. So I'm not even sure about the quote, frankly, and that's at minute 52. At minute 54, and I think this is really a curious thing, this source, whatever it is, this Anon DK, says that Julian Assange is a Rothschild puppet and that he was given Ecuadorian citizenship. He was also given an ambassador status with Ecuador, which theoretically allows him to travel throughout the world without being arrested. But of course, we have not seen whether that's really true. And I'd be interested in knowing where he is, because there are comments about the fact that nobody has seen him at the Ecuadorian embassy in London for days or weeks or months. Number 54, on minute 54 or so, there are UN aid workers and rapes. I think that is an incredibly interesting story. I know other people have reported on it, but it is of some interest. And number 55, which has to do with Elon Musk, who's always a curious character, and setting up worldwide satellites, and how that New World Order application is to set up both biometrics and digital or cryptocurrency, and that how well that would monitor us. So even in remote Africa, you could be monitored with satellites so that they'd know exactly where you were and whether you had 5 goats or 2. So it's all very interesting. I don't know whether anybody even will watch to the end of this, but I think it's time to take a look at a variety of other issues. There may be 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 of these issues that people actually do take up and begin to look around at, or there may not. But it is my way of saying, hey, look, let's keep after this and let's try to figure out exactly what's going on. I have my own thoughts about stuff that goes clear back 5,000 or 7,000 years and perhaps more, maybe much more. But those things implicate a lot of these issues and go after the truth of who we really are and how deceived we've been for thousands of years. But all of the things that I picked out at some level implicate where we might be. Maybe you don't think so, and that's okay. But so the challenge is out. If you're a researcher frog, pick out one of those things, take a look at that. If you have something else that you really think is imperative and you can give me documentation on it so that I can take a look at it, or I can pass it around to a couple others who have also put stuff in, we can come up with some kind of consensus perhaps and issue it to everybody else so that people can be more informed. I think it would be fabulous. Thanks so much for watching. If you have stuck around till now, give a thumbs up if you think this is a worthwhile adventure. I'm really interested to see if there are people that post notes that say, yeah, this is a good idea, or no, I'm not interested, or why are you doing this? And I'll either do it a bunch or I'll do it not at all. So if you haven't subscribed, think about it, and let's go from there. And as always, I look forward to your notes.